You have. See, oh, yeah, there, right. And there.
Yeah, I spoke on the road from the house last night and it was the dog out. 3 a.m. She's done.
You have. See, oh, yeah, there, right. And there.
Yeah, I spoke on the road from the house last night and it was the dog out. 3 a.m. She's done.
Hello there.
You have. See, oh, yeah, there, right. And there.
Yeah, I spoke on the road from the house last night and it was the dog out. 3 a.m. She's done.
Hello there.
You have. See, oh, yeah, there, right. And there.
Yeah, I spoke on the road from the house last night and it was the dog out.
Is this working? Hello, hello?
Welcome, everybody, to the February workshop meeting for the City Council, February 6, 2023. I'll let the secretary call the roll, please.
Council President Schilling.
Here.
Councilor Briggs.
Here.
Councilor Collins.
Present.
Councilor Fitzgerald is excused. Councilor Jantz.
Here.
Councilor Shane.
Here.
Councilor Burton.
Here.
We have a quorum, so the first thing on the agenda is the Economic and Community Development Department Annual Report, Part 2. So I guess, Mr. City Manager, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Woods. So tonight we have with us our Economic and Community Development Director, Charlie Mitchell. We'll invite Charlie to come up and give his presentation, Part 2.
Thanks, Brian. So Brian reminded me that we have a full hour. So either I talk really slow or you ask lots of questions or we get a break because I don't really have an hour's worth of material. So as Brian mentioned, this is part 2 at the last, I think it was the last work session you heard, and back in January, you heard part 1 of this department, which was planning, code services, and historic preservation. And tonight you're going to learn about building inspection, economic development, and urban renewal, which are the other parts of this department. So again, just as a refresher, you saw the same slide last time. It just a little bit of the kind of the org chart as it works in this department. And just the denotation again that a lot of what we do is serving 4, actually 5 now committees and commissions. And so we have the Downtown Urban Renewal District Advisory Commission. We have the Economic Development Commission, which also functions as the South Dallas Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee. And we have the Historic Landmarks Commission and we have the Planning Commission. And so a lot of what we do is serving those 5 bodies. So some of the accomplishments of the last year, Emily was just talking about overcoming challenges and struggles with getting staffing. That was a big issue for this department as well. And I'm pleased to report again that we're fully staffed, very happy about that. In 2022, we hired a new building inspector, we hired a new permit technician, we hired a new economic development specialist, and a new department executive assistant after the previous one retired. We also created the South Dallas Urban Renewal District. We submitted an offer and was accepted an offer for 791 Main Street, which is the former Bank of America property. Still haven't closed on that yet, but we're getting ever closer. And we've created some new staffing roles with some of our partner organizations, notably the Dallas Downtown Association and Explore Dallas, formerly known as the Dallas Area Visitor Center. Some of the challenges and opportunities ahead in this department that we see. I mentioned just a moment ago about our efforts to staff up some of these partner agencies, and that's going to continue to be a challenge and an opportunity for us as we really try to strengthen our partner organizations and increase civic engagement. The pandemic and other factors, but primarily the pandemic kind of did a number on a number of these organizations. And so they're languishing to a degree. They're struggling with filling out their boards and their committees and getting solid revenue. And so we know that we can't be successful with our economic development efforts if these agencies are not successful. So we're trying our best to help them out, and hopefully we're successful. We're not going to assume we're going to have overnight success. It's going to take a few years for us to get where we need to go. Another big one that's still on the horizon, even though it's been on the horizon for well over a year now, is the mill site, what's called the Transportation Growth Management Project, which is a jointly managed grant program through the State Transportation Department, ODOT, and the Department of Land Conservation and Development, DLCD. We're still just waiting because it's really ODOT's funded project, and they're the lead agency, and we can't really do anything until they say go. And the good news is we have selected a primary consultant, but we're still just playing the waiting game with ODOT on that one. And what that project will do again is really kind of master plan the whole mill site and the areas around the mill site to open that area up for redevelopment. As you may recall, redevelopment of the mill site is one of the council's primary goals. I mentioned the 791 bank property project a moment ago. That one will get underway. I'm pretty confident of that very soon. And we'll probably spend the majority of this year and maybe even into next year working on that project. And again, speaking of priority council goals, the La Creole Node Master Plan Revise Update Project. And again, part of that effort is to free up some new land for commercial development and higher density residential primarily. Excuse me. And we'll be closing out the first round of our ARPA funds with our building improvement grants and getting into round 2 of the ARPA building improvement grants, which will be going this year. So we kind of had our first round in 2022. We'll have our second round in 2023. We're going to be pursuing a National Historic District nomination this year. You probably heard about that in our last presentation on the historic preservation piece. We're going to be installing some new historic interpretive signs downtown. And with the South Dallas Urban Renewal District, really the focus is on building increment and creating some kind of a marketing plan for the future so that we can attract development into that new area. And there's probably going to be some changes. There already are some changes kind of underway with regards to how tourism is going to work in Dallas and in Polk County and our role with the Chamber of Commerce. So we'll launch into our first division being building inspections. There's our intrepid crew of building inspectors and support staff. The functions of the building inspection division, nothing's really changed. This is pretty much what it's always been. We really operate under the state's kind of guidelines in terms of our building codes. Our job is just to enforce those. Try to be, as much as proactive as we can and educational with the building community so that they get the right permits on time, et cetera. We review plans. We meet with the public, meet with contractors. We inspect construction work for compliance in various stages of construction so that it conforms to the relevant building codes. And we provide written and oral interpretations of the code. Some of the things the Building Inspection Division accomplished last year, 355 plan reviews, over 1,000 permits, over 4,200 inspections, and 139 certificates of occupancy.
You feel that with 4 people, I'm impressed.
And I'll show you in a minute, actually, this wasn't our best year recently. It was close. And so we're kind of holding steady, but yeah, there's a lot going on in Dallas. And so, if anybody asks you, kind of the quick snapshot of activity in terms of what's happening out there, this is one of the better ways to sort of explain that with numbers that most people can understand. Yes, there's a lot. That inspection number alone is pretty significant when you think about. I haven't done the math, but if you backed into the number of actual work days in a given year and how many inspections are occurring every day, it's a lot, because I think it's like 200 work days or something like that. And again, I talked about staffing earlier. And so we managed for the first time in Dallas to acquire a full team for the building division. So we have a building official, a permit tech, and 2 building inspectors. And you saw their photos a moment ago.
Charlie, does
Yes.
that include electrical inspections?
No, this does not include electrical
I
inspections.
understand the county lost their inspector,
Um,
or at least one of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So we do all the inspections in the city of Dallas except for electrical. We contract with the county to do electrical. But we do plumbing here. Some of the things we accomplished this last year, again, really staffing was the big one to really kind of match our staffing level with the level of activity in both residential and commercial. And those two really ebb and flow on kind of different tracks. So there's certain times of the year when commercial projects are really booming. There's other times of the year when residential projects are really booming. And I think we've done a better job educating and facilitating contractors, meeting new codes around energy in terms of with regards to residential construction and just in general, again, trying to be proactive with our education and outreach. Some of the challenges and opportunities ahead in building inspection. There's some new construction methods coming our way, most notably mass plywood panel. We're going to see the first one of those in Dallas here really soon, and our team's excited to see what they're calling kind of a modern method of construction right here in Dallas. So that's exciting. They're also anticipating some of the changes in the residential market to see more multifamily, more higher density residential development. There's a real market for that, and we haven't seen a lot of that in recent years. So we're expecting to see more of that.
And the state wants us to do more of that too.
Indeed, yeah, yes, they do. It's probably an understatement, I would say. Yes. If you like stats and graphs, we're going to get into that section right now with our building inspections. And so again, there's the last 4-year snapshot, 2019 to 2022. This one looks at numbers of permits and numbers of inspections. And again, as I noted a moment ago, this wasn't our best recent year necessarily to still cover all that. But, you can see it's generally holding pretty steady in terms of the volume there. And the pandemic really didn't put much of a dent in the activity. You don't see any kind of a dip there in terms of cause of the pandemic. Unless you might anticipate that we're seeing a little bit of the outfall of that maybe this last year because of things that slowed down early. Because usually with building permits, especially in the bigger projects, you're a couple of years lagging behind when those initial kind of plans were made sometimes. This graph looks at the same time period, but looking at valuations of those permits. And you can see those continue to go up, crested over $52 million last year. So that's good for us because if you don't know, the building inspection division operates as its own business unit, does not use any city general fund money. And so the more permits valuation that it pulls, that funding goes directly into the building division. That's what funds our operations. This one looks at certificates of occupancy, which again is kind of the very last stage of the process. So again, I think you might be seeing some of that lag out of the pandemic, a little bit as into this year. And again, you'll see there's been no like duplex projects at all last year, and in the last 4 years, like four duplexes in the last 4 years. And so there's a need and a demand for that. And as Councilor Shane said, that's the state really wants us to see, do more of those. Yeah.
One thing it doesn't show in the duplexes, townhouses do not count as duplexes, which they're still.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I make up a lot of townhouses.
That's a good point. That's a good
You may
point.
not have data for this, but
Townhouses are buildings that are connected, just like, it's just the line.
Right.
you may not have data for this, but I'll ask it just in case you might. With the change in state law that says you can build a duplex anywhere you have single families on property. Have we noticed any of that happening here?
You wouldn't see it here. You'd see it more in our planning numbers, I think, perhaps, but not that I'm aware of. Haven't seen that really play out yet here in Dallas.
For everybody else's benefit, this is a planning commission thing, but Dallas for a long time had an ordinance that said you can only build a duplex on a corner lot. And last year, the year before, the state passed a law that just superseded that and said, no, anywhere you have property that is zoned single family residential, you have to allow duplex. I'm not sure exactly. So that's what I was asking about, whether you've seen any building impact of that.
Yeah, not yet, but I would think that we would. Yeah, essentially what Councilor Shane's talking about it is essentially single family. You can't zone strictly for single family really anymore exclusively.
I don't think, this is my opinion. I don't think we're seeing anything from COVID because that industry wasn't. It didn't ever slow down.
You're right. It did not.
What's affecting us now is interest rate.
Yeah,
Because the buying power over the last year, somebody that could afford a $450,000 house can now afford a $350,000 house.
yeah.
That's
That's right. The affordability factor.
If you go and
Yeah.
look for a $350,000 house.
Mhm.
there are no-
Yeah, definitely. I know there were some supply chains that were causing some delays there for a while as well, as builders weren't able to really close out their projects because they're waiting for doors or windows or something.
Which is part of the reason the high density in the apartment buildings is lagging, because right now. Meter bases for apartment buildings are between 9 months, 6 months and 9 months out.
Really? Wow.
If you got a project that's gonna start, your lead time, you better order them before your project starts by between 6 and 9.
Interesting. Appreciate that data. Let's see. Yeah, so that's it for building. We'll move into,
I have a question. I thought maybe you would cover when you were talking about code and inspections.
Mhm.
What are we doing about fire inspections for buildings?
when you say fire inspections,
Well, with regards to code. So I know that there's building code and there's fire code.
right?
Is that all happening with the four folks in your department?
So our fire chief gets involved in that, and we also have a fire marshal that gets involved in that. So I don't know.
Started.
Yeah.
We started tracking fire one. They had an employee on staff when we lost Chief Brunkel, who was covering those services. Contracted that service out. And so they get heavily involved in the plan review stage and building permit review to make sure that the buildings are being built according to codes. And then as far as compliance inspections with, fire alarm systems and other types of systems, those are done. Both the fire marshal, the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office, and then we're training up one of our own employees to be able to do those inspections as well.
Well, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and oftentimes what the fire folks tend to look at is the ability for, their apparatus to serve a particular structure, to turn around and mobilize and those kinds of things. So when they're looking at usually like a subdivision or a multifamily complex or a commercial area, it's like, where is the nearest fire hydrant? How can they, serve that building?
Do they have room to turn around?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one piece. But the piece that I'm quite interested, not more interested in, but also interested in, is the piece making sure that we have people going in to buildings, especially we have a lot of bars, making sure that those are safe places for people to congregate, that they're looking at that from that angle. So
Yeah.
sounds like they are.
So one of the things our fire department's doing and is the development and creation of our community risk and reduction plan. And so we're doing that. That works in a way, and then also that having that sort of training completed with our employees to go and go as part of that event to do those inspections. They're not punitive inspections; they're just going in saying, "Hey, you're building, you have a few things get fire related, and what you're going to be here, your business is going to be in this building. You might consider doing some of these things to fix, potential fire risk hazards."
Affects their insurance premiums too.
That also helps.
What do you mean it's not punitive? What would happen if they walked into my building and I had open flame and a flammable fence?
So there are other issues. But I mean, those are things that we'd be identifying. What we're after is not going in there, kind of with our code book and saying, here's all your violations, and if you don't fix them, we're gonna fine you.
Okay.
Right, but we're going in more of a proactive approach to say, hey, we've identified 3 or 4 things, these things are things that you should resolve. If there's imminent threats and dangers, we resolve those in a punitive way. Those are not punitive.
And if I choose not to follow through, thank you for your opinion. I'm going to still have open flame and flammable roof for tents.
So I would call that an issue that probably requires on. But if there's things that we look at and say, the best practice will tell you not to put a space heater, next to flammable material. So there's not codes that necessarily talk about that. It's best practices. Those are the things that we're gonna be proactively going into buildings and making sure that that's done right. It's a real education for the property owners.
One with the fire marshal, we've seen more inspections in the roof and attic areas also for draft stops. That type of-
Yeah, so,
Which we haven't done for like 10 years.
right, it's been a while. So our contract with Polk, we'll have to look and see, initially, what we're really after is getting the plan review and those components taken care of. I can't, and there's some inspection services that are provided. I don't know the level of detail of that.
All right, thank you. Moving on to economic development. So again, I mentioned that we have a number of committees and commissions that we serve. This one is the Economic Development Commission. Those are the members. We have a new chair this year with Rita Grady and a new vice chair with Peter Cairns, a new member with Brian Dalton. The functions of our Economic Development Division, we provide staffing to the aforementioned commission. We carry out the Economic Development Strategic Plan. We're a liaison to a whole lot of folks. There's a few of them mentioned here, a lot of acronyms too. We have the Downtown Association. We have a contract with them. We have the Visitor Center. We have a contract with them. The Chamber of Commerce, SEDCOR, which is the Strategic Economic Development Corporation out of Salem, which serves Berrien, Polk, and Yamhill counties. Dallas High School, Small Business Development Center, Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, Business Oregon, and probably some others that I haven't mentioned. So we can accomplish what we need to accomplish much better as we network and collaborate with our partners, and everybody brings something different to the table. Through this activity, we coordinate business retention, expansion, and attraction activities. We function as the enterprise zone manager for the Dallas Independence Monmouth Enterprise Zone. And we staff now both urban renewal districts, now that we have two. And really we function as the business advocate. I like to think that we're all these things. We're the facilitator, we're the catalyst, we're the convener, collaborator, connector, problem solver, business advocate. That's the roles that we play. Some of the things we accomplished this last year, I like to call kind of laying the foundation. We put some things in place that will pay off down the road and building a foundation of success. Notably with our new hires and especially with our new economic development specialist, Tyler Ferrari. So we're focusing big portions of his time to serve some of these areas that we weren't really staffing well in the past. Excuse me, with the Downtown Dallas Association, the Explore Dallas, as I mentioned before, Historic Preservation, and the Dallas Business Inventory Project, which is a long time coming, that kind of got kicked off as coming out of the pandemic, as we saw the need for our ability to better communicate with our business community.
Question about
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
There've been some stalled attempts in the past to do something like
Mhm.
that. Get a lot of resistance. It's a long story.
Oh, yeah.
But what I'd like to know is, how's that going? What kind of participation are you getting?
It's slow. We just launched it last month. And so, we're still under 100, I think, of actual replies back and registration. We have a lot of data that we collected from other sources to start with. But it's really
Pushback from the business owners like we did the last.
well, we're not calling it a license. We're not calling it a tax. There's no cost to be a part of it. And we put the whole framework together in consultation with the business community and the chamber from the beginning. So yeah, and it may become a time when there's an appetite for a more structured license, but we're going to try this out. Hopefully this works. It just took us a while to get to this point, to find a software platform that would work and to have the staffing capacity to actually manage it. So I'd like to report back in 6 or 9 months and we'll see how well we're doing then, but we're really literally like a month into this. So it's taken us a while to get there. We did a kind of a pilot project, if you will, with the Polk County Tourism Alliance over the last year. It just kind of fell apart in the last week. But we put forth a lot of effort and some funding to make that work. I can report, more on that later if you're interested. I mentioned the mill site grant earlier. Again, that's still coming. It's on the horizon somewhere out there. I talked about the Lock Rail Node Master Plan update. That's going to be a big project heading into a lot of these things. Again, we kind of started in 2022, but the real meat of them are going to really take off in 23. As I mentioned earlier, we completed the round 1 of the ARPA building improvement grants. There were 7 projects, just under $96,000 of ARPA money that we're granting out to those 7 projects for building improvements in the downtown. And of course, the creation of the South Dallas Urban Renewal District was pretty phenomenal that we pulled that off, in about 9 months last year. Everything is built around this plan that was adopted by this council, well, not this exact council, but the councilors that were sitting on the council in 2021, in November of 21, to be exact, adopted the strategic plan with the frame of horizon of 2022 to 2026. The plan addresses 3 top priorities, which align fairly well with the council's top priorities, addressing the commercial land deficit, preparing the mill site for redevelopment, and continuing urban renewal revitalization in the downtown. That's sort of supported by what we're calling a daily primary objective, which is engage with local and regional stakeholders to facilitate a healthy, growing, diverse local economy.
When you say regional stakeholders, how far?
Well, it kind of depends. So like Sedcor is a good example. So they cover 3 counties. We were working with Travel Salem. They cover 2 counties. We work with our state regional development officer with Business Oregon, who covers 3 counties. So usually it's there's a lot of Marion Polk. Sometimes it's Yamhill. We work with Chemeketa Community College. They cover that same kind of general area. So it's usually 2 or 3 counties. When we say regional, that's typically who we're talking about. So I mentioned what we call that daily primary objective. This kind of breaks it down a little bit more concretely into the specific things that we're trying to accomplish, providing assistance to existing businesses and nurture a pro-business environment. That sounds really kind of amorphous and ambiguous, but it's actually very intentional. And it really goes back to the way that Brian's vision was to structure this whole department around economic development. It's not a coincidence that the name of the department now is Economic and Community Development. And the reason that I was actually hired to lead that was based on wanting somebody to lead it with an economic development perspective. So it was very intentional to create what could be an over-regulatory and a regulatory lens only department with more of a pro-business focus. Yes.
I'm not a business person. Give me an example of what nurturing a pro-business environment on a, what do you call it, daily primary objective? What does that look?
Well, what that looks like is, I'll just give you an example. Like today, we hadn't heard from the folks that want to do the food truck thing over here on the corner for a while. So we intentionally reach out to them on a regular basis to see, hey, how you guys doing? What do you need? When are you going to get going on your project? Those kinds of things. And so, and then when they come in, we're making sure that they get through our process and they don't get bogged down. And so we kind of hold their hand if they need to be handheld. All the stuff that you've seen Don Shealy do downtown. It's nurturing that relationship with somebody who's willing to invest in our downtown, making them feel good that like this was a good place for them to invest their money, and not saying, well, these are the things you can and can't do. So we're not throwing away the code books, but we're just approaching the relationships differently. And a lot of it's just attitude and how you approach your customers really is what it's all about. We work to attract diverse new businesses, expansions, and investments to Dallas, including tourism with partner support. Again, we're still a pretty small group, and so we can't do everything. We rely a lot on partners. We support and enhance small businesses, entrepreneurs, and startups, help to build community organizational capacity, and address or assess future development capacity and identify and address constraints. So that last one really, so for example, that's why we're focusing so much on the mill site and the Lock Rail node, because there's development capacity there, but there's some significant constraints which has prevented development from occurring there. And again, we're looking at that with a real, business development kind of a lens, because we know that we need to diversify our tax base. We need to create, jobs for local residents so they're not having to travel outside of the area for employment. and to create commercial opportunities for them so they don't have to spend their money in other communities as well. So that's it for economic development. And now we'll switch to downtown urban renewal. And again, we used to just call urban renewal because we only had one. I mean, now that we have two districts, we have to identify which district that we're actually talking about. And there is no specific report right now for the South Dallas district because there's no activity going on there yet. And so in the future, when we talk about urban renewal, we'll be talking either downtown urban renewal or South Dallas urban renewal. Again, another one of these groups that has a board or a commission. So this is the ERDAC, the Downtown Urban Renewal District Advisory Commission. New chair this year, Nancy Adams, new vice chair, Rich Rohde, and a relatively new member with Sam Duffner. Everybody else has been on there for a while. And again, if you're not familiar with that district, you can see the little map on the side there. It's generally the downtown, but it extends to the north across the creek a little bit to include a few other areas as well. But generally speaking, it's primarily what you would think of when you think of downtown Dallas. So the functions of the district, this is right out of the urban renewal plan that was adopted back in 2004. To promote the development of unified and cohesive downtown, promote a mix of retail, commercial, and residential uses with pedestrian orientation, enhance the pedestrian environment on the streets, public parks, green spaces, et cetera. And again, that's why when you look out here on Main Street, right behind you, the streetscape project, the new lights, everything out there, that reflects right back to this plan. And it was this plan, this district that funded most of those improvements out there. Promote high quality design standards, increase employment and business activity in the downtown, provide staffing support to the district advisory commission, work with the Downtown Association and others to catalyze redevelopment, and then work on specific projects. And then this last one is really, that's the bottom line is urban renewal is meant to be kind of a self-perpetuating engine, if you will. And so the more investment we get in the district, the more tax revenue we earn to do more projects in the district. And so at the end of the day, what we're really trying to accomplish is to get the private sector to invest in the district, because that's where the revenue comes from. If there's no building activity happening in downtown, if there's no new construction going on downtown, then our revenues are flat and we don't have any revenues to work with. So this is what we accomplished last year. We did 9 building improvement grant projects. We awarded just under $250,000 that leveraged a total value of $865,000. So pretty good return on our investment, I would say, just from that perspective alone. The photo that you see there is of the Carnegie building project completion. Hopefully some of you got a chance to tour that project or see that project. Very exciting to see that building, which has been, languishing in the community for a number of years, get brought back to life again. Great project. We've kind of revitalized a little bit, if you will, our minor improvement grant by increasing that grant amount that came to this body wearing your urban renewal hat recently, to change those grants from $500 a piece to $1,000 a piece. And so far this year, we've completed 7 projects, or $3,500 worth of grants. As I talked about earlier, the bank property, our offer has been accepted. We have submitted a brownfield grant application to the state, and we're just kind of waiting on that one now to see when it's going to close. Yes. What? So brownfield means basically a contaminated site is a brownfield. There's an underground storage tank on this site. And so we have the ability to tap into some state funding if we need it to remediate the site. We may not even need that, but we want to make sure it's going to be available to us should we need it.
I have a question for you, possibly for Brian. I'm not sure. I understand that we got a look at their preliminary, no further action letter.
Yes.
And we're negotiating with them to make some changes in it. Is that accurate, and where does it stand?
I think we're at the final draft that both parties are in agreement to as of today. So I think we're pretty much, we're getting really close. Yeah. And well, I think so. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think we finally got Lane, saw the last version of the letter today, and Brian did, and I did. And I think we're finally comfortable with the language in that. And I'm really grateful that DEQ has been that willing to work with us as a buyer, because I don't know if they really had to do that, but they were accommodating us, I think, very, very nicely, in my opinion. It has caused the project to get delayed, but I think that's okay. I don't have a
We went
problem with
through,
that.
as you probably know, we went through a similar process with the site where the senior center
Oh,
now stands.
right, right.
And that took like 3 years plus to get through. So this is like light speed.
Oh, yeah. Hey, it's all relative, right? No, I've been really happy with working with DEQ so far, and I'm not, I've heard some rumblings out in the community that they're accusing them of, dragging their feet or taking too long. And I don't think that's the case. I think they've been very accommodating to our requests. So we also, this last year, we finalized the historic interpretive sign project downtown. We're still waiting for those signs to get finally built. Again, we do a lot of waiting. If you notice, there's a theme here. We do our part and then we hand it off to somebody else. And they're like, wait, happens a lot. And again, another sort of tie-in or nexus, if you will, is our role with the Dallas Downtown Association. Because again, as I showed you on the map earlier, the downtown is the urban renewal district, and they are the same essentially. And so supporting the association helps us carry out a lot of our urban renewal objectives as well, because they're the ones out there on the ground helping get good projects into us. And speaking of the Downtown Association, so since we do provide staffing support to it, it's kind of part of us now. We're kind of wedded to it for a while. It's been a tough year, for the DDA, but they're really bounding back. They have a new board, a lot of new members on the board. They're trying to grow their membership. And this all just started, a little over 6 months ago. So we're still really new into this whole new relationship, if you will, with the DDA. And so far, I've been really impressed, with how well we're doing. It's not going perfect, but it's going, I think, better than I expected. And time will tell. I mean, we're giving this 3 years, 2.5 now. We're, half a year into it, and we'll assess where we are at the end of that time frame and see, collectively, we'll decide how we want to move forward with our investment in the downtown. But they accomplished a lot this last year, and they're working on, really growing the organization heading into this year. 7 new members on the board. They got a grant from the state to help with a new summer movie series this year, and in the downtown, which is going to be a lot of fun. They've taken on a larger role with Crazy Days. So, they're stepping up, I think, and fulfilling the role that they arguably probably should have been playing all along, but they didn't have the leadership and the capacity and the stability to allow them to do that. Some of the challenges and opportunities ahead for the district. Again, I'm switching gears a little bit back away from the DDA to the district. So the building improvement grant, that's what BIG stands for, will remain largely dormant for the next few years because we still don't have the funding to capitalize that program. However, the good news is ARPA to the rescue. And so ARPA is supplementing that program for 2 years to kind of fill in the gap. And that's going well, $100,000 a year with that investment. Our focus now really is on the minor improvement grant program, which is what MIG stands for. And again, those are going from $500 now to $1,000 a piece. And so we hope to see a lot more activity with that program. We can afford those grants. We can't afford the $50,000 grants right now. And again, the focus with, just from a finance perspective with urban renewal is to pay off our existing debt. So then we can free up our capital to actually do projects again. We hope to leverage urban renewal to get other grants, like from the state, for example. But the big project that I've underlined there for this year is going to be the bank project. I mean, that's going to be a game changer, shall we say, in the downtown. And it's going to be very comprehensive. We're going to take our time and do it right. And hopefully in the end, we attract a quality development onto that site that will return great tax revenue back into the district, play a fundamental role in sort of the landscape and the skyscrape, if we will, or what's the word I'm looking for? What's the skyline? Thank you. The skyline of downtown Dallas will be changed forever. Yes.
Say an important word. I just want to make sure that I understand that correctly. The goal is to make sure that eventually, we're not there yet, but that eventually the occupants of that building our tax paying businesses.
100%,
Okay, not looking at another school or church in the downtown.
unless they pay taxes.
Okay,
As
good point.
long as they're paying property taxes.
The goal is still going to align with, I loved your words, that a good mix of residential, commercial, and so retail, commercial and residential.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the broad vision that's going to be refined over the next year is to have commercial on the ground floor there, and some numbers of floors above that into some other use, which could be residential in terms of like apartments, could be boutique hotel, could be whatever. We have to refine that vision, but I think that site can support, a 3 to 4 story building with the right project in there. And again, that's the game changer that our vision is, and so that's what we're hoping for.
One of the reasons you'd like to have upper floor residential is because it's part of what keeps your downtown alive at 5 o'clock.
Very well said. Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, you want to make your downtown like a neighborhood. I mean, you want people living and shopping and working in your downtown. And one of the benefits of that is it creates a safer environment too, because people are watching out in their neighborhood and you don't have these voids where there's nobody here. You also reduce, travel and car use even potentially. So there's lots of benefits to having residents in your downtown. And we have a number of buildings that could be, we're still hoping we can get, out of our ARPA funds or urban renewal funds to get a good upper story residential project. And we've created a system whereby with the ARPA funds, you can get extra points to help out your project to get funded for that. But nobody's really taken us up on that just yet. So I talked about the historic sign project earlier. We hope to get that done, hopefully the first quarter of this year. Again, there's a total of 5 signs that are going to go up downtown, recognizing the history of Dallas and Polk County, both the white history and the native history. We're going to get that National Historic District nomination complete. And then there'll be some other smaller projects, maybe some other signage projects or something like that. So we'll do what we can with the funding that we have for the near term. Again, we'll continue that active Dallas Downtown Association support with our city staffing. And the goal there is to get the DDA closer to self-sufficiency. And that's it. We look forward to great things this year. So we still have a few minutes.
Any more questions for Charlie? Okay. We'll see everybody at 7 o'clock.
Last.
Because it was too close to the tannery.
Well,
But it's,
I remember going there once, they was calling Friday, they had a box of donuts.
Look at the tannery? Yeah.
And they asked me, do you want a donut?
Eldon would bring in files for me to collect on or something, you know, and we'd bring in a paper file from the tannery. He'd leave, and the file itself would smell the office. So fun, it was so pungent. But I liked it.
I remember that.
You remember those things?
Moved up here and stuff. Yeah.
Quiet.
Yeah.
Nobody else. Welcome to the February 6, 2023 City Council meeting. I'm going to ask that the secretary call the roll, please.
Council President Schilling,
Here.
Counselor Briggs,
Here.
Counselor Collins,
Present.
Counselor Fitzgerald is excused, Counselor Jantz,
Here.
Counselor Shane,
Here.
Counselor Verdin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So you said you've got some introductions.
So we don't have any introductions tonight, Mayor, but I do want to do a couple of recognitions. First, I want to recognize our economic and community development staff. So the Who's Who magazine is put out, it's a publication that's done by the Itemizer Observer every year. And this year, the City of Dallas organization put together a 2-page spread talking about economic development work in the city. And the IO published this for free, 2 pages, which is awesome. In addition to that, our new communication specialist put together 2 really nice ads for the City of Dallas, one with all the elected officials on this side, and this side is new businesses that have come to town over the last couple of years. And so I highlighted about 6 of our businesses. So really good work. The Aquatic Center is also highlighted in here. I will say of the 46 pages, this Who's Who magazine is really focusing on businesses in the community. Of the 46 pages, 32 are Dallas businesses. So that's pretty good. So Dallas is well represented there. In addition to that, I just want to recognize some of our senior staff. This last week, there's been some more challenging issues that have faced the community, and I just want to recognize our public safety professionals that have done an outstanding job, have gone and done their duty very well this last week, and just very grateful for them, and knowing that they keep our community safe is very good. And just, it's been a great year as I've been able to reflect, and we'll talk a little bit later today on the strategic plan that all of your staff here at the city are working really hard. As was pointed out earlier in presentation by Charlie Mitchell, we have been understaffed as an organization for a good part of this year. We're getting to the point where I want to knock on wood, because a lot of our departments are becoming fully staffed. And I really look forward to how much more work we're going to be able to accomplish with more people. But we're just doing a really good job for you. And I want to let you as a council know that that myself, I'm very pleased with the work that our employees are doing for the City of Dallas. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the list is public comment. I got a script I would like to read first. Public comment. Please provide us with your name and address for the record. You have up to 5 minutes. It is your turn to talk and ours to listen. Please direct all comments to the mayor. The mayor will refer to staff for readily available information or for follow-up as needed. Defamatory or libelous comments will not be accepted. Distractions take attention from the speaker. The audience, city council members, and city staff are asked to focus on the speaker during their time by being respectfully quiet. So with that, the first person I'm going to call on is the Dallas Arts Association. Eddie.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Eddie Nelson, 537 Southwest Augustus Drive here in Dallas, Oregon. I am on the board of directors for the Dallas Arts Association. We applied for 2 grants for the 2023 year. We received a $2,500 grant from the Oregon Community Foundation and a $5,000 grant from the Oregon Arts Commission to develop a performing arts theater here in Dallas. So we're really excited about expanding the efforts of our Arts Association. So for prior to COVID, we've been doing an annual murder mystery downtown. It had to be postponed. Our last one was in October of 2019. We're bringing back the murder mystery this coming Saturday at the Dallas Event Center. Really excited about that. The Arts Association is looking forward to working with Charlie Mitchell on economic development and what we can do to help bring stuff to our downtown and even into our community, and thanking Brian Lotta for the support that he's showing our Arts Association. With that, I would like to introduce the hostess from the Queen of Hearts Casino and Hotel, that resort that is opening up here in Dallas on Saturday night. So I would like to introduce Miss Ruby Red.
Thank you so much. I gotta say, I thought I better come and let you know we're opening the casino on Saturday at the 11th. So I hope there won't be any problem with that. And it's gonna be a real high-class joint. There's no rebel rousing. We've got our own bouncers, and the tables are legit. Okay, so I hope everybody gets to come, and I think it will bring lots of business downtown having a casino, right? Okay, so I hope to see everybody there with your money. Oh, and the man of the hour, the owner of our casino, Rick Kane.
Good evening. I'd just like to say hello to you tonight and just let you know that my name is Rick Kane and I am the owner of the newest, biggest, and best casino in the city. I would just like to thank the city council for granting me the permits to open my establishment. And I just want to let you know that we are going to usher in a new age of economic development and opportunity in this city. So that you won't have to put up with that failed casino that you've been running here in town for the last 20 years. So we got a new place in town. I hope to see you folks on Saturday night.
Signor, it is I, Pablo Quixote, the owner and proprietor of the Butucan, the original and superior casino here in town. Now, I happen to know a few things about the Queen of Hearts Casino. They start by mob money. Their kitchens full of rats, full to bursting of rats. You must shut them down. You've all been to my casino. Perhaps a little gambling, a few little roll of the dice. I don't. I can tell.
Then they'll work there.
Yes.
But it is an abomination to this town that the Queen of Hearts Casino is allowed to even open it.
Yeah.
If you can call them doors. I humbly request that we save the Toucan and remove the Queen of Hearts by removing its name. That's the deal. Thank you, Signor and Signor. Please.
Thank you for your time this evening. We're going back to practice now.
So Saturday, February 11th at 6 o'clock at the event center. There's tickets available. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Next is the Friends of the Dallas Aquatic Center, Ann Hurd.
Good evening, everybody here. Ann Hurd, Friends of the Dallas Aquatic Center, 623 Southwest Hater Street here in Dallas. There's going to be a lifeguard class this weekend. Let me just tell you how it works, because it's a little different than I thought. I don't know if any have signed up for it yet. I talked to them on Friday. Nobody had by last Friday. But the way it works is anybody that comes to take the class, they have to do some online work, and then there are 3 or 4 days of in the pool. But there's no money up front. Nobody has to pay anything up front. And if they stay on as lifeguards at the Dallas pool, they don't have to pay for the course. However, if they want to take their little license, lifeguarding license and go somewhere else with it, then they have to pay the city $150 to get their license. So I thought that was a unique way to do it. And the only other thing I really have, except that the pool is busy all the time, is that got a really nice $2,500 donation this week from Roger Jordan. One of the, I think he was their city manager when they started the pool.
He was.
Yeah.
City manager.
City manager, yeah. Anyway, so that was really nice of them to do that. And we'll put it to good use because we're going, we know what lift we're going to get now for the pools. One is it's gonna be a lift that can be carried from the therapy pool over and stuck into the same holding system for the lap pool. So people who want to swim laps can also but can't get in by themselves, can get there with the help of this lift. However, it costs $13,000 to put in the $10,000 lift. So that's what they're still struggling with that. But they're charging us so much money, gouging us, you might say, to put this lift in. So anyway, but at least they've decided on a lift and we know what we're gonna do now. Because of the construction of the pool, the way it was constructed, it's really hard to get. It has to be anchored in the concrete, underneath the pool deck. And that's not really easy to do. So that's why it costs so much, I guess, so. But anyway, things are going great. We're really thankful to Roger and all of our banner people who are renewing for this coming year, and come down and see us sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Any other comment? Is there anybody on the telephones?
No, there isn't.
Okay. So the next item is the consent agenda, and that consists of the approval of the January 17th city council meeting, the January 17th council workshop minutes, acknowledgement of the January 17th Public Works Committee minutes, acknowledgement of January 23rd Public Administration Committee minutes, and the Planning Commission appointment. Yes, sir.
Move by item E, planning commission.
So you want to remove that from the consent
Yeah,
agenda?
just we need a quick
Okay.
conversation.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
Move
So-
to approve.
Second.
Moved in second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, now we'll go on to the items removed from the consent agenda, planning commission appointment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It was brought to my attention that there were concerns about the one applicant having prior experience in the real estate area and that it could be a potential conflict. After talking with the mayor, I just want to have a brief conversation. I think this person should be put on. I don't think there is a potential conflict as the person just works in there, and that actually the experience of that person could be a great benefit to the planning commission. I know that in the recent history, the city council has not had real estate people on the planning commission. So if there's any further discussion, I just wanted to have a conversation.
Mr. Riggs.
What was the reason that we hadn't had someone on in recent history?
Well, I can try to answer that. Since I'm the old guy. In past years, if you were a licensed agent and on the planning commission, whenever there was an approval of a subdivision or change of codes or something like that, it could be a potential or sometimes an actual conflict of interest. Because they're turning around and selling that property to somebody else that we just rezoned or we just approved a subdivision. So we didn't want to put in that position. So that's kind of why I think in the past councils, back as far as I know, in '83, that we've never had somebody on the planning commission that was a licensed agent. Doesn't mean they can't work for a real estate person, but they just were not a licensed agent.
So they could still be on the commission, but if it was a conflict or a potential conflict, they just would abstain from voting.
Yeah, well, if it was a potential, they could.
They could still
Declare it
vote.
and still deliberate and vote, yeah.
Wasn't a concern. It was just something I felt worthy of conversation of this council before we, changed course from historical
Was that the
appointee.
sheet on the licensed realtor? Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
so a good example would be, and it's potential conflicts and actual conflicts are really based on a case by case basis, right? So, an actual conflict of interest would be a property is coming in for subdivision and the real estate agent, the planning commissioner is the listed agent for that property, right? There's an actual conflict of interest there because approval or denial of that application would have a financial impact on that person. So they would declare that actual conflict, recuse themselves from participating in that discussion and the decision. If there's a subdivision, that's coming in and that person and the planning commissioner is not the listed agent for that property, there is a potential conflict of interest in that upon subdivision of that land, this planning commissioner could become an agent for either a buyer or a seller of that land. And so in that instance, there's a potential conflict because in the future, that person may, have some sort of financial benefit or detriment to the subdivision. But again, as Lane pointed out, they would just declare that potential conflict, could still participate and vote in that decision. And so, conflicts of interest, both potential and actual, are commonplace in planning commissions. And so it's just knowing and training the individual on, the protocols for when they need to make those declarations is important. Then making sure that those declarations are made. Recognizing that all of that is individual to the planning commissioner or the city councilor for that fact, to know when they need to make those declarations.
David.
Yeah, as I understand, this person is not a licensed agent, which means that even if the agency they worked for were involved in a subdivision, they're not going to collect commissions on anything that gets sold. So given that, and given the fact that we've always been very careful at the planning commission level about ex parte and conflicts of interest, I don't see a problem here. I really don't.
Yeah, and staff aren't concerned either. And it's good to have the conversation just again to remind everyone, including those on who watch this video later or live today, to know that there's a process built in place for potential and actual conflicts of interest, and that the city of Dallas is very good at making sure that process is followed.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Mary Newell to the planning commission.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
All those opposed, carried unanimously. So now the reports and comments from the mayor or council members. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
I do.
Yes, sir.
The admin committee met last week and reviewed the council rules and procedures as this body had kicked down to them. And we've made some recommendations for your review later on in the packet, some minor changes.
Okay. Anybody else?
I do have something to say about
Sure.
that, but I'll wait till we get to that
Okay.
item on the agenda.
Okay, reports from city manager and staff.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So we have 5 items to talk about tonight. So I'll just jump right in. The first one is a recommendation from our Public Works Committee that was made earlier in the month of January. So, and it pertains to our water rates and our stormwater rates. And so, knowing what's kind of in the windshield as we look forward in terms of infrastructure projects, there are some very significant water infrastructure projects. We have, of course, the expansion of Mercer Reservoir, which is very expensive and will not be paid in full by rates. I can tell you that. We will seek other funding. But there's also projects like our Clay Street Waterline Replacement Project. Phase 1 of that will be hopefully completed this year or early next year. And then there's also a phase 2 of that project. That's a major trunk line that comes into town. We were just notified today, or not today, I was notified today, but I think we found out later last week that the Business Oregon has authorized us and approved us for a loan for that project. It's $2.9 million, just phase 2. And so there's some benefit to the proposed rate increases for that project. I can talk about that later if you'd like. But we have that, and there's also the James Howe Reservoir post-treatment tank, another significant project. So as we look at those and kind of forecast what's needed, both in our system development charges and in our rates, we've calculated a significant adjustment in the water fund, built in over 3 years. Those rates were presented to the Public Works Committee. They're included as attachment A of the staff report. In your packet, starts on page 16, is the report that was presented to the Public Works Committee. And so those rates and the increases are consistent across all of the different rates. So the same percentages were applied. And so we're looking at that. In effect, what that does is it enables us to pay for all of those infrastructure projects that we have in our capital improvement plan over the next 5 years on the water side. In addition, for the expansion of Mercer Reservoir, we know that that's going to be at least a $70 million project. And we do know that our rates are going to have to pay for a portion of that. And so what this does is after the 3rd year of rate increases, we'll be able to set aside $2 million per year from these proposed increases to be able to support and pay for that project over the long term. So as we know, we'll have to take out some debt to pay for that project up front. This rate structure that we're proposing will be able to pay that debt service, over the years to pay off that project's loan. And so we're doing the heavy lifting now and the decision making on that today. One, to be able to save up money for when that project comes to life, and then second, to pay the debt that's going to be incurred to pay for that project again when it goes to construction. In addition to that, we're also proposing a $2 per year over the next 3 years increase to the stormwater fund. We're just finishing up the North Fork Ash Creek stormwater study. We know that there's going to be some significant projects tied to that work, and that will help with the flooding issues that we have on the mill site in other areas, downriver from there as well as upstream. And so we're looking at doing a $2 per year increase on that fee, which is attached to the utility bill. Right now that's at $10. So after the 3 years, we'll be looking at a $16 fee for that service. I will say, in looking at the water rates, when we brought this topic up in November, Councilor Briggs asked us to look at a comparison of other communities. I put the caveat in there that we also want to be mindful that, rates do fluctuate from city to city, and it's not a fair assessment to say, well, our population is so much, or we have so many water users, so a similar city of similar number of water users is going to have a similar rate, because it really depends on the system that they have, where they get their water from, whether it's groundwater or river water, and then also the infrastructure improvements that they've made, right? So if a city had to build a new water treatment plant, for example, and another city had not, that new water treatment plant was going to be very expensive, and they're going to have a higher rate to help pay for that project. So as I talked about, we have at least 3 or 4 big infrastructure projects on the water side, which is why we're looking at these rate increases to be able to pay for those projects. But the League of Oregon Cities did do a water rate study and a comparison study. They do this every year. So the last published report came out in 2021. The 2022 report has not yet come out. But in 2021, what they did is they put together a comparison of all cities, and they tried to normalize the data by saying, how much does your city charge for 5,000 gallons of water? And so what that does is it just says, okay, if city of Dallas, a user has 5,000 gallons of water, compared to the city of Independence or Salem or, Yamhill, we're going to have a fair comparison on just that charge. And so what that showed for the statewide average for 5,000 gallons of water in 2021 was $44 and change. In the city of Dallas, that number was significantly less. It was in the $20 range. And so there is a lot of room for growth in our rates to be able to get towards or near the statewide average. So what we're proposing with the rate increases after the 3 years would bring that 5,000 gallons of water to a cost in Dallas of just below the statewide average in 2021. So it'd be a little less than $44. if we anticipate a 3% growth in those rates for the statewide average, which I think is probably close to point or maybe a little bit conservative, we would be around $5 less, $5 or $6 less than the statewide average. And then regionally, when you look at that report from the League of Oregon Cities, it's even less than that. So there's a little bit bigger separation. So we're feeling pretty confident that our rates are comparable to other cities with the proposed increases. Right now, we're certainly lower and significantly lower. And these rate increases, again, would accomplish our goal of being able to pay for these needed infrastructure projects in our capital improvement plan over the next several years. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions. There is a recommended motion to approve the rate increases subject to the adoption of a resolution, which is also in your packet for later this evening.
Any questions? Go with then David.
I just want to be clear, this is not my question, but somebody asked me this question.
Yeah, sure.
But, well, because I don't know that I understand the question. So that's why there's the caveat. Are residential and commercial water rates the same, or is the staff report wrong? I went and reread it and I'm not quite sure. So can you clarify? Do you understand what that question is?
I do.
Okay,
So, so when you look at, I'm going to take you to, let's go to page 16 of your staff report. So you can see, or your packet, so you can see the base rate for residential users. The current rate is $22.03, right, for the base rate, and the per unit use for an additional unit of water. The base rate includes 3 units of water, and a unit is 750 gallons, right? And so you pay $2.37 for that additional unit. The base rate for trying to see for commercial.
Third one down.
The third box.
Right. So you have residential outside the city limits, multifamily outside city limits, and then commercial and industrial. Yeah. So the commercial, and I'm sorry, I was confused by the outside city limits, but that's just for the residential. So commercial, the base rate is $44.43. So they're not the same, they're different.
And the staff report is not wrong.
And the staff report's not wrong, right? Yeah, the current rates are what we currently charge for all of the different rate categories.
So I was also asked about SDC increases to help pay for the costs related to growth. Have we had that conversation?
So yes and no. So our SDCs are tied to our capital improvement plan, which are tied to our master plans, right? And so we're in process of getting ready to update several of our master plans and facility plans to be able to look at, our growth, right? We're updating our TSP right now with funding that we received from ODOT. We have in our capital improvement plan, I believe this year, I'm looking at Gary Marks to confirm that this coming fiscal year, in fiscal year 23-24, we're looking at updating our water master plan and our wastewater facility master plan. And when we update those plans, we look at a 20-year planning horizon, right? What are the projects that we anticipate for growth over the next 20 years? We then take those projects and put them onto our capital improvement plan. And with our SDC methodology, we calculate, okay, what is it going to cost us in SDCs, accounting for growth over the next 20 years to help pay for and offset the cost of those projects. And so projects that were currently SDCs that are being collected today were for projects in our plans that were adopted several years ago. And so a project like Aaron Mercer Reservoir is not currently in an SDC calculation because that wasn't in our master plan previously, right? And so as that project gets added in and it becomes on our capital improvement plan, that would be done. So yes, we have done that for projects that are already contemplated in those master plans. And the conversation will be happening as we update those master plans and facility plans over the next couple of years.
Excellent, thank you.
The city attorney, then David.
Yeah, Brian, maybe I think I see the source of maybe the confusion. And if you could clarify, commercial and industrial appears under the third box on that first page, and then the box below it carries over to the top of the next page. Then you also have commercial and industrial in the next two, showing different rates. So commercial and industrial appears to be shown twice at different rates.
That's it.
Yeah, the second iteration being the same as the base rate for residential. So I think that's probably where that question came from. Is that right?
So, yeah, go ahead, Cecilia.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that third block in the first page where you say base rate of 44.43.
Yeah.
That is for outside residential and outside multifamily, outside commercial, outside industrial.
So that's also outside commercial industrial,
So if you go to page 17, where Lane was saying base rate,
right?
that is inside city limits. So the difference is additional unit for water.
So our base rates are the same. Okay, all right. All right, yeah, that's where I was trying to reconcile in my head if the commercial and industrial was outside or inside.
The resolution. We should probably clarify that.
Right, we should clarify that. And I
We
think
can
that's
do that conceptual.
that's simple enough to just say
Yep.
commercial and industrial
Outside.
outside city limits.
And multifamily too, as I understand, Cecilia, that whole box is
And
outside.
yeah, and
And the next
and the
one
other,
too.
the other two categories, the residential and the multifamily, say outside city limits. It's
Yeah.
the commercial and industrial that
Okay.
doesn't. And so, yes, so the base rates are the same, which is correct. It's the per unit rate that's different. So commercial and industrial is $1.84, which is less because they tend to use a lot more water. And so, and then residential is the $2.37 currently. Yep.
David, you had your hand up.
Yeah, when I was first elected to the city council, 17 years ago now. Jim Fairchild, who was the mayor then, took me aside and said, what do you think is the most important thing the city does? And I don't remember what I said. I think I probably said public safety or something like that. And he said, no, it's water, because without water, you don't have a town. Without water, nobody's going to build houses or businesses. You don't need a fire department if there's no water for them to pump. Literally, without water, you don't have a town. And Jim was absolutely right. That is of all the important things we deal with here, and they are important. Water is number one because it's a prerequisite to our even being here at all. Nobody likes rate increases. Nobody does. I don't, you don't, nobody does. And there will be grumbling when we raise rates on anything. It's inevitable. But 60, 70 years ago, the city council of that time did us all an immense favor by looking to the future and biting the bullet because it was expensive. The dollar figures look different because of inflation, but it was expensive to build a reservoir then. It's expensive to build one now. They bit the bullet and built Aaron Mercer Reservoir, and that's why we enjoy the quality of life that we always have here. One of the biggest responsibilities we have is to provide for the future, the kids and grandkids, so that they can enjoy that same quality of life. So this needs to be done, and I support it.
So entertain a motion.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Is it possible to even give us a number of how much a monthly increase would be to the average consumer in Dallas? Residential. Dollar amount. Are we talking? What kind of dollar amount are we impacting
So
citizens
you're asking for the average usage.
of an average user?
Yeah, let me look here real fast on that, Counselor Briggs. I think I talked about that in
And I'll
the
just
public
add
works
that
report.
I agree with Councilor Shane,
So,
but I also feel that this is a steep increase.
yeah, so for example, when you look at page 20 of the staff in the packet here, table 3 is the comparison of forecasted Dallas water rates to forecasted statewide averages, right? So today, or in 2021, you paid $29.41 for 5,000 gallons of water, right? So that was a year ago. In 2022, you paid $30.73. This year, with the proposed rate increases, you would pay $36.86, right? So $6.13 difference, right? Next year, so the second year of the proposed rate increases, you'd pay $42.40. So you're paying a little less than $12 more than you are right now. In year 3, you're paying $48.76. So you're paying $18.03 more than you're paying today for 5,000 gallons or 5,000 gallons of water.
Yes, Michael.
Which I just want to point out that the reason there's 3 units of water, that's a summertime usage. The average household in Dallas does not use in excess of the 3 units of water, correct? As far as a normal yard irrigation.
So the 3 units of water is more a wintertime number than summertime. I would say an average household probably uses between 4 and 5 units of water without irrigation. If you get into irrigation, then that can climb to 10 to 12 units, depending on how much you water your lawn. And so those that do some extensive watering are going to pay a lot more in the summertime. But an average, so the base rate includes the 3 units of water. So you're going to pay an additional 2 units if you're a family of 4. It's like my family uses about 5 units of water a month. And we don't irrigate in the summertime. So that's pretty much how much we pay year round. And so, we're going to be paying that rate, $48 for water, in year 3 of this.
So help me understand the amount of your bill is going to go up $50, $30, $20.
So for the water, you're going to go up by about $18 after 3 years.
Yeah, and sewer
Per month. No.
So sewer, we're not proposing any rate increases to sewer.
What was the $2?
So that's stormwater. Yeah, so 18 plus 6, because it's $2 per year for 3 years. So you're gonna be paying $24 more a month after 3 years with the proposed rate increases. For, I would say, a household of 3 or 4 people.
And then your summertime usage is going to increase by $1.50 per unit after 3 years.
I got 2 more questions.
Yep.
Sorry. You mentioned the SDCs and reviewing those numbers later on. To me, the cost of our water that we want to protect is compromised by the growth. So it seems to me that we're putting a lot of burden on the people who have lived here all these years to pay for that without really a clear estimate or fuzzy feeling that we're going to hit these SDCs equally hard, if not harder.
Yeah, so we've contemplated and have thought a lot about the amount of SDCs that you would likely be able to recover from development over the span of the life of the reservoir project, right? Because that's the big one. That's one that costs a lot of money. I think you're going to be able to get between 15, probably 12 to $15 million out of SDCs towards that project, right? And so yes, you're right. Future growth, though, these rates would also apply to those people, right? So you have to think it's not only on the residents that live here today, but also those that this expanded water is going to provide for. And so they would also be paying these higher rates to be able to support that project. So they're paying twice in terms of SDCs and rates. So I think that to answer your question of, that people paying for the new growth, they do get hit harder than current ratepayers because they're paying the SDC charge and the future rates for their bills in the future. So yes, SDCs will certainly be a component of that project. We're not at that conversation yet because we haven't done the master planning. That's going to happen this next year. But we also know that this water project for the new dam, if we don't start saving the money today, we're going to be behind the 8 ball when it comes to actually construction of the project. And we're going to miss out on some good financial opportunities to maybe get lower interest rates, other stuff like that, if we come to the table with a good pot of cash on hand to be able to help with the financing of that project. So it's important for us to begin today, even though there are some unknowns, and I understand that, and there might be some uncomfortableness with that. But certainly know that we will aggressively approach SDC conversation, the methodology, to make sure that development and future development is going to pay their fair share of that cost of that project.
I think the community is going to keep their eye on that.
Yep.
Pretty hard. And the last question I have is, what guarantees do we have that that money is going to be safe, sitting in a savings account that we can't touch in general fund?
So it certainly can't be touched in general fund because there's state law that prohibits that. But I would say from that control is really up to the council, right? And your city manager, as your budget officer every year, I will be proposing to put that money into a reserve line in the budget. So that's where the money will sit, and we will keep it in our bank account, and it will accrue interest until the time that we're ready to do that project.
Thank you.
David,
Yeah, further on this question of who's going to pay for it, the present users and future users, and correct me, watch me carefully here, because I want to make sure I don't put a foot wrong. The money that we raise by these increased rates is not by itself going to come close to paying for the reservoir. But what it does do, you mentioned interest rates, and it probably also makes it easier for us to apply for grants and other financial aids, because we're showing that we have significant skin in the game. And so if, for example, we take out loans to fund part of the reservoir construction, then it'll be the people living here then, not now, but then, who'll be paying the interest on those loans, and so on and so forth. Is that accurate, what I said?
Yeah, it is. And so we know that the Mercer Reservoir expansion project is going to be a very expensive project. And we know that we're going to have to pull together different sources of financing to be able to make that project go, including sources from the federal government and the state government. I'm already knocking on doors and talking with people. I met with Senator Merkley earlier today and brought up this project and said, I'm not ready for the money today, but I am going to come to you in 5 or 7 years, and you're going to tell me yes then. And if not you, your predecessor. And so, and I've talked with our state representatives. They're well aware of this. Business Oregon's well aware of it. They're sick of me already talking about it, right? And so you have to have those conversations today to be able to leverage that money when the time comes, so that everyone's ready to make that happen. But yes, you're right. We need to go to the table with some money in hand, right? We just can't go to them and say, hey, I have an $80 million project, help us out. And they're gonna say, well, what do you have in terms of resources? And if we went to them and said, we don't have anything, they would say, come back to us in 10 years, right? So we're making the decision, and I'm proposing the decision to be made today, so that when we go to them in 5 or 10 years, whenever the case may be, that we're gonna have a pot of money that's gonna be 10, 12, $15 million in hand, ready to make it happen, so that I can ask the federal government for $40 million, and I can ask the state government for $25 million to be able to pay for this project. And then our money would, go in to get that project completed. The federal government money will be a debt service, and with hopefully some forgiveness to that. And so the future, growth of our community and the ratepayers in the future will pay for that debt service to be paid off, right? And so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at.
Yep.
So thank you. Yeah.
any more discussion? Well, I'd entertain a motion to direct the city attorney to draft resolutions incorporating the proposed rates and fees for the water, stormwater services as described in table 1.
It's already in your packet.
So
Okay,
move.
that was easy.
If I could, would you agree to consent to amend to include in the third box under table 1, after commercial and industrial, comma, outside city limits?
Most definitely.
Yep.
So we don't need a motion.
Well, you do need a motion,
We don't need an
and
amendment.
it's been made.
You already asked for it.
Yeah. You have a motion. Now you need
Yeah.
a second.
I have a second.
Who seconded? Did I miss that?
I'll second it.
See,
There we go. Very good. I knew you were on top of it, Mayor.
you doubted me?
I didn't, not at all.
Well, you're good.
All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those opposed carries unanimously. Next item.
All right, so our next item is the initiation of a city charter review process. So I met recently with Council President Schilling and Councilors Briggs and Shane. They've each expressed the desire to review the 2014 city charter and to make some amendments. A city charter is the constitution of the city, and it is a document that can only be amended by a vote, an affirmative vote of the people of Dallas. And so, but when we updated the charter in 2014, we went through that process and the election were successful in that. And so what this really requires is deciding your process for reviewing the charter. So if the council would like to consider some charter amendments, you would initiate that process, and then staff would recommend forming an ad hoc committee to conduct the review and make recommended amendments coming back to the city council for your approval, and then the formation of a ballot measure to go to the voters. The timing on that would probably, I would recommend a year. So putting this on the ballot for May of 2024. Staff recommend the ad hoc committee be comprised of 6 total members, 3 elected officials, so the city council, and then 3 non-elected residents of the city of Dallas. And I would recommend that they meet twice a month. So if that's amenable to the council, there is a recommended motion to that effect on page 23 of your packet.
Any discussion? Michael? No. Prior, when we did it last time, the council was asked to nominate 2 people each, and then the staff picked one of the 2, and that was the ad hoc committee. So this is slightly different, but it's fine, works.
Probably a little more streamlined this way.
I would agree.
Yeah, so, and however the council wants to select the 3 council members is up to you. Staff don't have a recommendation on that. We would do a regular solicitation for the other 3 committee members, and then bring those applications that we receive back to the council for your approval on that.
Assuming that we go forward with this as proposed, what do you think would be the time frame for fully constituting the committee?
I anticipate that we would have the committee formed by the end of March. So we would start meeting in the ad hoc committee in April. And the time and date of those meetings would be made once we know who the committee members are, just for their availability.
Well, I'd entertain a motion. Yes.
I move to initiate a review of the 2014 city charter and operate the formation of an ad hoc committee to conduct a review and make recommended amendments to the city council. The ad hoc committee shall be comprised of 6 members, 3 non-elected residents of Dallas, and 3 city councilors, and shall meet twice a month.
I'll second.
And moved and second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So the next item on the agenda is the council rules of procedure. This is a recommendation coming back from the Public Administration Committee. They have recommended some changes included. Those changes are in attachment A to the draft council rules of procedure. If the council would like to make any additional changes, they could do that tonight. If not, there's a recommended motion on page 25 of your packet.
Any comments, discussions? Right, yes. David.
First, I want to just commend the admin committee for the work they did. This is a good piece of work, bringing the thing up to date and bringing our rules more in conformance with how we actually operate. I do have one thing that I would like to still see addressed, and it is section 12. It's the very last section. I'll read the part that I'm concerned about. It has to do with, I'll read it out loud.
What page is it?
Say what?
It's page 43.
Page 43, yes. The key part, the part that got my attention is except for inquiries related to city services made as a private citizen, elected officials shall deal with employees of the city solely through the city manager and shall not make inquiries to or give orders to any such employees. It's the inquiries part but that bothers me a little bit because of the way it's worded. It's very absolute. There's no wiggle room there. It basically says that we cannot ask questions of a city employee. We have to funnel everything through the city manager. Think about what that means in practice, for example. an ordinary private citizen can walk into City Hall and go up to Cecilia and say, Cecilia, what did it cost us to operate the aquatic center last year? Or can go up to Gary and say, Gary, how are we doing on water? How full is the reservoir? Are we going to make it through the summer? You and I cannot do that. We cannot walk up to a department head and ask that question under this rule. We're prohibited from doing it. So in effect, we have less access to knowledge of what goes on here than the people who elected us to represent them. I think this is just an oversight, and I think we should fix it and make it more flexible. The League of Oregon Cities has a set of proposed model rules that a lot of councils have adopted. Actually, most of the cities our size have adopted some version of them. I've got a copy here of their proposed rule for this particular issue, section 12. And it's very even-handed and very balanced. Just a tiny bit of history for those who don't know it, and I'll keep it real brief. The reason this rule is in here in our rules is because 10, 12 years ago, we had a city councilor who really abused the privilege and was in fact getting in the way of city staff, taking up too much of their time. So we adopted this rule to keep that from happening. One person, he didn't even finish his term actually. He was gone rather soon, but one person abused the system. So we have this rule, but bad cases make bad law. And I think we should soften this and make it more in line with what other cities do. I haven't been able to find a single city of our size or even larger in Oregon that has a rule as absolute and severe as ours anywhere. And I did look. But the League of Oregon Cities proposed rule, which they've been polishing and tweaking and developing over a long period of time, it's very, very balanced, and that's the key word, balance. It's balanced and even-handed, and it balances the need of city staff to be able to do their jobs with the need for the elected representatives, the people, to get information when they need it. So I would just suggest that I don't know if we want to do it by going back to committee, if we want to hash it out tonight. But I think we should soften that rule and make it more even-handed and more balanced.
Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, I would just say, just as a matter of interpretation, the phrase, the clause, except for inquiries relating to city services made as a private citizen, that qualifies the entire paragraph, the entire sentence. So if a private citizen can ask a question about the aquatic center, you're entitled to ask the same questions that any private citizen would be entitled to ask. You're not prohibited from asking questions that a private citizen could ask.
Okay, well,
that first clause is accepted. Inquiries relating to the city services made as a private citizen. So that is intended to allow you to approach city staff the same as you would if you were approaching them as a private citizen.
Okay, now the way I read that is that you have to make a separation between whether you're wearing your private citizen hat or your city councilor hat when you ask the question. But I don't think that's quite the interpretation you just gave us, if I understood you correctly. Because I mean, it's a little disingenuous to think that one of us could walk up to a department head and say, "Look, I'm asking this as a private citizen. I'm not really a city councilor at the moment." Yeah, really? I mean, human nature doesn't work that way.
And I don't think that the interpretation is that you have to do that. You can come in as a city councilor and ask questions about the aquatic center, public works, economic and community development. That's all fine. I think the intent of this is really to get at that you have a city manager that you've hired to be able to handle matters of personnel, workflow, those sorts of issues. And this is trying to prevent a city councilor from dabbling in that level of work and of the administration of the city. And so it's kind of retaining your position and role as a policymaker, a decision maker for the city, and having the city manager be responsible for the administration. So when it goes to talking about, inquiries, investigations, or give orders, to city employees, that's where you've kind of crossed that line, right? Because a regular citizen,
well, giving orders, absolutely, that's beyond the pale,
right? So a regular citizen, for example, also wouldn't come in and give orders or make inquiries about, hey, tell me about this personnel matter, right? And so that would be out of bounds for a regular citizen. It's also out of bounds for a city councilor to come in and make those sorts of inquiries. And that's what this rule is really after. I agree with Lane. I think the except for language in the beginning really, gives the ability for city councilors to come in and get any information that any other citizen could. So.
Okay, well, if that's the way we're going to interpret in practice, then I don't see an issue.
Michael?
And just further clarification, doesn't this really put the onus on the department managers themselves and takes it off of the city councilor? So that they know that we're not giving direct orders as.
No, I don't agree with that because the language says what the city councilor may and may not do, not what the staff member may and may not do. But as I say, if we're interpreting it the way it's that Lane just expressed it, then we probably don't have an issue.
Yeah, and I would just add a little bit to this. I've trained all my department heads to know of this rule. And as I've also trained the city councilors of this. And so, they're aware of this. They know that, if a city councilor, kind of approaches that line or crosses the line of, making an inquiry into a personnel matter or administrative matter, they know to, one, if it's done through, depending on the mode of communication, they know to loop me into those conversations so that I'm aware and I can then resolve the issue, with the city councilor.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we create a mechanism that lets people go around
Sure.
chain of command, just access to, information.
Yep. Yeah, I think as it's written and the intent of what it's written is to make sure that city councilors have just as much free access to information, through department heads or employees of the city, regardless of your position as on the council. And then you have the added benefit of, that information, from your city manager, your employee, to be able to get, additional information that maybe a department head might not have.
Okay, well, if that's the practical effect, then I'm okay.
Larry?
I just want to make a comment. We had that same discussion at the meeting and it was looped back to basically where we're at right now.
Yeah, Michael?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the revisions of council rules of procedure and direct the city attorney to prepare a resolution to adopt the approved revision.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So the next item on the agenda is the strategic plan mid-year review. So not included in your packet, but available at your desk, and I put some of these at the table up front for the public if they'd like them, is kind of a mid-year review on paper. I won't go into this in any detail, so you can breathe a sigh of relief there. But as it's written and constructed here, the status notes are on the right side of this document. The goals and their action item numbers are on the far left columns. There's a description of general terms in there. If you pulled out your strategic plan, you can get a little bit more information on the description of those items. And then I only included items that were slated to be completed in fiscal year 2023, the year we're in. I also included 2024 because there was a couple of items, for example, item 2E, which is determine the best option for the fire marshal, fire inspector position. That was slated to be completed in 2024 fiscal year next year. But due to the retirement of Chief Brumfield, we escalated that and moved that up to this fiscal year. And that project is now completed with the contract we have with Polk One. So there were a couple projects like that that were moved up from next year to this year. In the status notes, it's color coded. So items that are in red are items that are in process. If it's in black, it's an ongoing project or a task that the city staff does every year. And then the items that are in green are items that have been completed in this fiscal year. And those were not ongoing. I think in some cases there might be some that are ongoing, but those are items that were completed this year. In aggregate, when you look at all these items here, staff took a big jump on how much we were going to get done, and I think we were ambitious. In this strategic plan, and this does not encompass all of our work, but it certainly encompasses a good amount of it. We had 110 strategic plan action items that we were planning to get accomplished this year. That's quite a lot. 35 of those are ongoing, so things that we do every year. So that means there's 75 projects that were completed specific to this fiscal year. Of those 75 projects, 10 of them have been completed. 62 are in various stages of completion, and only 3 of those have not yet been started. But will be started shortly. So, and then 2 of them, because of staffing issues, are delayed until next year. So I feel very good with the work that we've done. Certainly, this is a good document for you to review and look at as we head towards our council goal setting retreat, which is still in process of being scheduled. I'm trying to work with the League of Oregon Cities to get that organized. But this document's here. Certainly happy to answer any questions on anything you'd like to discuss tonight.
Are there any questions?
You mentioned 3 that you hadn't.
Yeah,
ones
so
are
item 1A, the formation of the Sesquicentennial Planning Committee. That's not yet been started, but that's something that the city manager's office will start advertising this month to get that underway. The city's sesquicentennial celebration is February of next year. So in February of 2024, the city will have been incorporated for 150 years. I'm already working with Representative Scharf on getting the Oregon legislature to recognize us. And they'll pass a resolution at the state for that. So that's in process. And then I want this committee to be formed to be able to throw a 150th birthday party for the city of Dallas. So we're going to start advertising for that. I would encourage some city councilors and other board and committee and commission members to also participate in that.
Make sure that the fire department is there if you're gonna light all those candles.
Yes, we will. We will.
We need them up front.
We'll have big Costco sheet cakes that we'll put together, and it'll be a good time. So we'll party in February next year. So that's one item. The other 2 items, and these are the ones that relate to staffing or in our police department. They're items 30A and 31A. The transition to a 4 10-hour work shift for police patrol division. As indicated in a couple of the items above, we've hired 4 positions in the police department this year due to vacancies and a new position that was created. And so because we have those vacancies, we weren't able to implement the plan. So now we're going through the training of those new officers and getting people comfortable in their positions. So that's why we haven't moved on that yet, but that's been delayed. A completion target by the end of next fiscal year is what our goal is for that. And then 31A is the reassignment of a traffic safety officer role in the police department. Again, because of the staffing vacancies that we had, we're delaying that until next year as well. So those are the 3 that have not yet been started.
And that's the completion of by the end of fiscal 2024. So that's June of 25. Is that right?
No, so that's yes, actually it's June 25. Yep. No, yes. June of 24. June of 24. Sorry. Fiscal year 23-24. So fiscal year 23 is this June.
Okay.
24 is June of 24.
All right.
Yes. So it's just 1.5 years from now. Get myself confused on June, July, and fiscal year.
Any more discussion? So none left.
All right. So that's enough for that item. Thank you. Again, very pleased with the work that we've completed so far, and look forward to getting everything else on that list checked off for this year. My final item tonight is the process to fill the council vacancies. We did a recruitment over this last month. And we received 6 applications to fill the 2 vacancies on the city council. Those applications are included in the packet. We redacted any, personal information like addresses and phone numbers, I believe. But so again, the charter specifies that the vacancies have to be filled, and it doesn't discuss any sort of process. So the council is really, it's up to you on how you'd like to move forward at this point. Your direction was to get the applications, which we've done. And we're now looking for direction from you on how you'd like to proceed. Traditionally in the past, we have held interviews. We've done that when we've had a few candidates, 2 or 3, in a council meeting like this, where we have 6. I might recommend, if you want to do interviews, to do maybe a special city council meeting in a town hall format, or we could do it down in the civic center. Maybe even invite community members in. You could, have them, maybe introduce themselves and ask certain questions of those candidates.
One year, I remember we did it like executive session where we interviewed one person at a time. And they would leave the room and the next person would come in and that way they didn't have the luxury of hearing the other people's answers.
Yeah, so.
One way to do it.
Yeah, so executive session rules wouldn't allow you to do that. In that format. You could certainly ask candidates not to be in here during a public meeting. But I agree with Lane. I think, elections, to get elected to the city council is a very public process. And as a public meeting, anyone's able to be in here. And so I think it would be important to maintain as much transparency in public forum for this process as possible. Be staff's recommendation.
Larry?
I might suggest that we give them the questions in advance and they come with the questions already answered, so they don't have the opportunity to listen to the person's answer before them or after them, or something in that format.
David?
This is how I was appointed, and there was one opening and 3 of us who were interviewed. I can tell you from experience, us all being here, being presented with the questions and hearing each other, at least for me, it allowed me to show how I would be set apart from these other people. We all had very different backgrounds. It felt like if someone's elected, that's very public and transparent. It should be even more public and transparent when someone's appointed. Because the last thing you want is, oh, well, so-and-so was picked because it needs to be open and transparent. And I was very comfortable with that. I think it helped all of us stand out and say what was really important to us.
David?
Yeah, I'll second that and add a little bit to it. When you run for council, you are really in the spotlight. The chamber does those meet the candidates forums where everybody's in the room together and everybody hears everybody else. It's as public as you can be. And I totally agree with Debbie. I think it needs to be public. That being said, second issue, is there, and I guess maybe you should answer this. Is there any particular reason why this has to be done at a formal meeting of the council? Because if we're not going to make a decision then, but just hear what they have to say, why couldn't it be a work session or something less formal?
The only rule is it would constitute a meeting of the council, whether you call it a formal or informal. So it would require the usual notice and process for a public meeting. So whether you call it a council meeting or a workshop, it doesn't matter, but the notice would still have to go out.
Well, notice is fine, because if we're talking about making it as public as it can be.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the past, it seems to me we've done it in a special meeting, basically, which was like a town hall.
That's kind of the direction I was headed,
when
yeah.
Debbie was, there were just 3 and we did it in a council meeting.
Mhm.
Did we
And the
not?
decision
I think it was a work
made that-
session.
that
Was it a
evening.
work- Okay, yeah, but so you've done it all different number of ways. But whatever it is, it's a meeting.
Yeah, so what I would contemplate would be, maybe bringing the 6 candidates in. We're happy to provide the questions to them in advance, like Councilor Briggs suggests. The last time we interviewed candidates when Councilor Verdon was appointed, we had 10 questions. We didn't ask each person all 10 questions. The council each picked 1 question they wanted to ask. I certainly think that we could present those same 10 questions to the 6 candidates. In advance of a town hall style meeting that we could hold down in the Civic Center on a night that's not a first or third Monday. And then we could, have either a facilitator, ask each of the 6, candidates questions. And if the council could just be amongst the crowd of people listening, if there were other people from the public interested in attending, they could be there as well. And then you could just take all that information that's being shared during that town hall back to the council meeting, where you could then make your vote to fill those 2 positions.
Does the vote have to be the same night as the interview? No. Okay.
It usually isn't.
Okay.
Hasn't been,
I think ours was because it was only the 3 of us. And honestly, I wish there were 3 because 6 is going to be a long night if
Yeah,
there's
well-
that many questions. I'd rather go through the applications and kind of pare it down to 3, but we may not agree on the same 3. So
Yeah, and I think that you're not going to have to ask every question, right? When we were here before, we didn't ask every question. We asked 8 questions because there was 8 counselors that asked one question each. And that's a lot. I would actually ask less questions. So what I could do to help with that is I could give the counselors here those 10 questions and say, vote for your top 4, right? And then I could take the top 5 questions out of that exercise. And then those are the 5 questions that get asked, even though we give each of the candidates all 10 questions
I like that
to
idea.
study for.
I like it.
So and then we're asking a total of 30 questions, and we can limit their answers to 2 minutes, so that conceivably we're only going to be there maybe an hour and a half.
I kind of like that.
Michael,
My only issue that I have with this process that we're having is we're now limiting the amount of information I know. I don't know these people.
Right.
I don't know how they would answer the 10 questions. And so my proposal would be to go have them give us the list of questions, narrow it down to maybe 8 questions, have them answer it, have them give it to the public so we can read all of their questions, and then maybe come up with 1 or 2 questions that we ask in a open session.
And so to kind of maybe give a little bit more insight, we could propose what my recommendation would be. And then of the questions that aren't answered, we could give each of the candidates a homework assignment to turn in, responses to the 5 questions that weren't asked, that night. So that way they would have that information, and we could bring that, we can include it in the council packet for when you're going to make the vote, so that the council and the public would have access to that information as well. So they're answering all 10 questions, 5 of them in person, and then 5 of them in writing.
Debbie, then David.
I agree with Michael that we're getting less information from 6 people if we're asking fewer questions. Is there a way to maybe get the responses and then shorten the list, like a callback? So you've got 6, you get these things back and you're like, maybe not, and everyone does that on their own, and then narrow down the field to like a second callback for them.
Well, I remember one that we did where each counselor had 7, there were 7 counselors, there were 7 questions. You picked your question, you asked every person that same question. And you just went around and we staggered the start there 1 through 6. So you're number 1, you're number 2. So the first person would ask number 1. And once you went around the table, then the next person would start with number 2. And they
We answered all of the questions, but there were only 3 of us, and you all did the voting that night. But that was only 1 round of voting. Had it gone around and around, to multiple rounds, we would have been here a long time.
Yeah, Kirsten.
Is it possible to do some sort of hybrid of all of this by saying, okay, we're going to have, and I'm just going to use a nice round number, 10 questions. We would like you, applicant, are they applicants? Okay, we would like you, applicant, to, in 3 minutes, we would like you to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. And now there's only 7 questions that we're going to ask them as an interview process. So we're giving them an opportunity to give a little 3-minute speech.
Yeah, so you could, again, certainly I would recommend, if you want to have them answer, less questions in person and more questions in writing, we can certainly do that. I think having, some question, I think you want to be able to see and, get a feel for them in person. That being said, you don't have to ask them every question. You don't need to make it a really long exercise. But I do feel it would be important to have, everyone treated the same way, right? So you're going to take all 6 and you're going to, if you want to narrow them down, like Councilor Burton said, you have to give them all that same opportunity to go through that process together. But I think that you could accomplish, asking questions in person, whether it's, 3 or 5, whatever the number is that you settle on, and then have the rest of those questions be written responses, and they can go on as long as they want. And that information then again is made publicly available to everyone because it's included in the packet that you have to consider coming into the meeting where you then, deliberate and make a vote.
Yeah, my hesitancy with that is what we do here isn't, we don't write essays. That's not what we do. And so we're exploring a skill set that we don't actually use on council. What I want to see for the applicants is if I give you information, did you read your packet? Did you research it? Did you Google the answer? How did you come up with this? Or did you just off the cuff and you happen to be charming? And so that I can identify, I don't necessarily want somebody who's just charming. I want somebody who did their homework. So that, and we don't do, I mean, you've never asked for an essay from me.
I can start.
Our skills of communication, and we're not doing that if you do it that way. You're asking to put it in writing, not verbally, so. David, you have your hand up?
Yeah, however many questions we settle on and whatever they are and whatever blend of written versus writing, however we work out all of that stuff, I do think it's essential that every applicant get asked the same questions.
Yeah.
And it's essential because we might miss something otherwise. Let's say we ask person A these 3 questions and we ask person B the first 2 questions and then a different third one. That B person might have had a really good answer, better than anybody else's answer to the question we didn't ask them. So however we slice and dice this, I think everybody needs to be asked the same questions so that we hear everybody's responses to the issues we care about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to respond to what you said, Councilor Collins, I do think that there are opportunities as city councilors where you do have to put your written skills to display, particularly if a citizen emails you and says, hey, tell me about this. You're going to respond with a written, response back to them. And so I do feel that, you will utilize the skill set of writing, in your role as a city councilor. And so there's benefit to having them write down some answers. But again, it's up to you on how you want this process to run. So.
Debbie.
As far as like the questions, like Councilor Collins was talking about how people can just Google things, like they have no idea, but they're just going to Google it and come up with an answer. I think a better way, and I deal with this all the time in the classroom, is having someone explain, here's a situation, what would be your process to work together to come up with a solution or something. Knowing someone's processes makes more sense than do they know what this acronym means. But I think I would like to see a hybrid of giving everyone the same written questions, getting those back, looking at them, narrowing the field and having more time in person with maybe 3 people than spending all that time with a smaller amount of information from 6. But maybe all of them getting the same, narrowing the field, and then having 3 also answering the same in person.
David.
Yeah, on this thing about written versus oral, first of all, I second what Brian just said about it, but I think we're wrong to say we need to hear everything orally, because when you're writing an answer to a question, you have more time to stop and think about what you're really saying. And one of the things we want to know about people is their thought process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's a good point. You won me over.
So we've kind of beat this horse pretty good. So what do we want to do?
Oh, I have one more.
Sure.
I do. I have a whole other meeting. No, I have another thing that I would like to discuss. When we vote, and I brought this up once before, but when we vote, I would like it for us to have each counselor explain our vote rather than just saying, I vote for Susie. But to say, I vote for Susie because of her experience. I vote for Susie because of her whatever, so that this isn't an election. This is a popularity contest at this point. And so I want to be really clear why each of us are saying yes to whoever it is that we're voting for.
Is there a legal issue doing stuff like that?
No, there could be many reasons to.
No, and I'll let Lane answer. I'll let Lane answer if there's a legal question. What I would say is that, I don't know if you can necessarily compel every counselor to explain why they voted the way they did, but you could certainly give the opportunity for a counselor, if they wanted to say, I voted for this person because, they were green shoes or whatever.
A vote is a vote. An explanation is something you can offer if you want to. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And we do it by ballot, and then the ballots are read. So by the time it's read, they've already voted.
Right, and it's a vote with the counselor's name.
Yeah.
After it's read.
With the applicants, right.
Or
Yeah.
I'm voting for.
Every vote is public record.
Yeah. You may vote 2 or 3 times, you may, then 0 people will get dropped off and you have to vote again.
So I would say from, if you wanted to explain how you're going to vote, you would do that before the ballots are actually cast. So you would say, of all the information that I've heard, the town hall we had, the written answers, I was really impressed by, applicant B because they,
Okay.
did X, Y, and Z. And that's the person that I'm going to vote for. And I encourage my other counselors to vote for that person too.
Okay.
So you could say stuff like that.
Okay.
As part of your deliberations leading up to the vote.
And
So we put our heads down and just raise our hand.
well, and
It's like
with
thumbs
that-
up, 7 up, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Well, back to the questions, we're looking at putting out a number of questions. You're gonna get the questions out to us. We're gonna kind of say, we want these questions asked in writing and we want these questions asked verbally at the meeting.
Yeah, so
We're having consensus here between 3 and 5 questions that we're asking, or are we asking 7 questions? Well,
See, that's what I was asking you about narrowing the field, because I don't mind if I would like to have all 6 answer, say 5 questions in writing and go over those things and then have a fewer amount of people to interview in person and get to know more about them.
that's fine.
Yeah,
Historically, 6 is not a difficult number.
It's
We've
not,
had-
No.
no.
oh God.
Yeah. It's
3
Yeah,
took a long
And
time.
I would say, Councilor Burton, with what the strategy you're putting together is you're not getting their full menu of skill sets when you have the full group do the writing version or the oral version and then narrow it down from there and then bring the rest in for the other half, right? So
Mhm.
you want to put everyone through every step of the process. If I were to put this in the form of a motion, I would say something like I move to interview the candidates at a town hall meeting and select 4 questions from the list of 10 that will be orally answered. The remaining 6 would be done in writing after the town hall meeting. The questions will be determined through a selection process by the council administered by the city manager.
Repeat
So
that last
moved.
piece for me.
So I will give you the 10 questions
Yep.
and say, give me your top 4. I will then
Got it.
tally that up and those will be the 4 questions that we'll
How do you
ask.
pick the questions?
We already have the 10 questions from the last time we did this about a year ago.
Use the same question.
We'll use the same questions.
How does the council decide which ones to put in writing and which ones? to add?
They will email me their top 4 questions they would like to be asked and answered orally.
And then the voting is gonna be determined at a later point in time, or is it just the top 2?
The voting would be administered at a subsequent city council meeting.
But how do we narrow it down? Everybody votes for. you're voting
So
for
at the vote, you would
Mhm.
vote for 2
and
candidates.
by the bottom one goes off, is that, or are we?
If
Or
you
the
if
top
you have
vote
if you have top if you have 2
Like an
if
election.
you have 2 vote getters that receive 5 votes, those 2 are elected.
Right, but if 2 don't, then the bottom goes off. is that-
Yep.
That's right.
Correct.
That's the process, yeah.
Yes.
Does the mayor vote in the?
No.
the time?
So is there only 4 counselors that ask them questions in person then?
It'll be facilitated. So all the
okay.
counselors will be there and, either myself or Emily Gagne or, maybe our new recorder by then will be here and she can ask the questions. We'll figure it out.
And we'll just listen to the answers.
And you will listen to the answers.
I know, well, one final point as we pin this down, because I think we're almost there. The process of you sending us the questions and we telling you which one we like, can we do that in writing by email, or do we have to do it in person?
We'll do it via email.
Okay,
Yep. And I'll send that email tomorrow.
then I like.
Don't
that.
reply all, send it just to.
I won't send it. I won't send it with everyone. It'll be blind CC. So.
So moved.
Second.
I hate to ask us any more discussion. Put your heads down and
Don't
raise
ask.
your hand. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed carried unanimously.
David, you seconded that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So anything else?
That's all for me. Mayor, thank you.
The next is resolutions number 3496.
So this resolution is a supplemental budget resolution. And the supplemental budget pertains to funds within the general fund, so departments. First, we received after our audit, we recognized that our beginning fund balance that we budgeted was low. So we're proposing to increase that by $344,000 on the expenditure side of the general ledger. Fire department personnel services is proposed to be increased. This was due to the conflagration work that we did this summer to fight the wildfires in and out of the state. And so we're proposing $110,000 go towards that. To help with our ALS ambulance response, we're working with Chemeketa Community College to administer an EMTI or EMT intermediate training. So this hits both the fire department and the ambulance department budgets in their travel and training for $14,000 out of the fire. And then on the ambulance side, it is $9,500. The generator, emergency generator at the fire department went kaput earlier this year unexpectedly. And so there's a $70,000 increase to the capital outlay fund for the fire department to pay for that. On the ambulance building, we had to do an unexpected update to the fire panel alarm system, and that cost $15,500 for that. So that's another amendment. Under the administration budget, we moved the community liaison position from the police department into the administration department. And so that's a $55,000 increase for the communications specialist position. Also in the administration budget, the Parks and Recreation District feasibility study was significantly more expensive than we thought. It was a good process. That work's completed. So we're looking for a $55,000 increase to the professional services budget in the admin budget. And then finally, under the facilities budget for repairs and maintenance, we had to get the HVAC system renovated at the Willamette Valley Fiber Building unexpectedly, and that was a $15,000 project to get that done so they could have air conditioning in the summer this last year. Under the grant fund, we're also looking at a few changes there. The OSFM, Oregon State Fire Marshals staffing grant, we received that grant earlier this year. We did not budget for that, and so that came out after the budget season was completed. So we're looking at a revenue of $35,000 for that. Dallas Rotary Club gave the city a parks grant for work they did up at Rotary Park. So $1,000 in revenue there. On the expenditure side, the cost for that staffing from the OSFM staffing as well as the parks grant is indicated in that resolution as well. So resolution 3496 has been prepared. It's in your packet starting on page 63, and resolutions are adopted by a roll call vote.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. Is there any discussion? Larry.
Brian, is there any money owed to us yet outstanding from the county or the state on that conflagration bill? Or have we received all of the funds?
Cecilia, have we received all the money from the conflag from the state? Yeah, so it's all come into our bank.
So we've got all the money in and we're still 110 short.
No, this reflects the expense, which we don't budget for the conflagration work. So we don't know, because we don't know if we're going to get called out, right? So when we get called out, we then put that in a budget resolution for the expenses that were paid, because we pay the employees when they're out. That money then gets returned into the budget. So what this reflects is the money coming out. The money coming in is not shown on this, Cecilia.
No, I increase the beginning balance instead of increasing where that money.
Sure.
It's all kind of-
Yeah, so the 344,000 in the general fund revenue includes the conflagration money that we received from the state.
One other question. Have we seen that feasibility study for Parks and Rec, or is it still
So it's completed. The committee has reviewed it. And so it hasn't come to the council yet. That committee is meeting tomorrow. They're going to make some recommendations, hopefully out of that meeting. And you might hear more and have an item on your agenda at a future meeting to kind of discuss next steps with that process.
Any more discussion? I'll have the secretary will call the roll.
Counselor Collins,
Yes.
Counselor Jantz,
Yes.
Counselor Shane,
Yes.
Counselor Verdon,
Yes.
Council President Schilling,
Yes.
Counselor Briggs,
Yes.
I declare resolution 3496 to have passed by unanimous vote. Next is resolution 3497.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So this resolution is a resolution establishing schedules of rates for water service and related water account fees and for stormwater. I'll note the one change on exhibit 1, the third row down that says base rate includes 3 units of water for residential, outside city limits, multifamily, including mobile home, parks and retirement homes, outside city limits. And then under the third bullet, commercial and industrial, we're going to add a comma outside city limits to that cell. So but we had a discussion on this earlier with a recommendation to bring this resolution to the council, and the resolutions are passed by roll call vote.
You heard the reading of this resolution. Are there any discussions? If not, I'll have secretary will call the roll.
Counselor Jantz,
Yes.
Counselor Shane,
Yes.
Counselor Verdon,
Yes.
Council President Schilling,
Yes.
Counselor Briggs,
Yes.
Counselor Collins,
Yes.
I declare resolution 3497 to have passed by unanimous ballot. Next is resolution 3498.
All right, so this resolution is regarding the master fee schedule. So it was discovered the other day that when we in one of our iterations of this master fee schedule, somehow eliminated the fee for subdivisions through the planning process.
You got to fix that.
And that's something that we want to fix. The good news is we've not received any subdivision applications before we caught this error. So I also had the economic and community development staff look at all of their fees to make sure that we didn't inadvertently take something else off. And it was discovered that was the only one that was missing. We did make one other change though, and it relates to, so under the subdivision, you can see these changes in the red line version on page 78 of your packet. So under the subdivision, there's the preliminary plat fee, which is $300 per lot for the first 20 lots, and then $100 for each additional lot. And then there's also a final plat. So that's the document that gets recorded with the county. That's a $500 fee. Those are the fees as they existed before they were eliminated from the fee schedule. So there's no change in that. It's just restoring those. But there is a change to, if you flip back on page 77, the right-of-way vacation. Previously, there's a two-step process here. The first is that a person that wants to do a right-of-way vacation will request blank petitions. And then the second step is they return those petitions once they've been signed, and we go through the public hearing process. Traditionally, we have not charged a fee for the preparation of those blank petitions. We've only charged a fee once they've been signed, returned, and we've gone through the public hearing process. In talking with our planning staff, a good amount of work goes into the preparation of those petitions because you have to, one, identify the geographic boundary of the right-of-way vacation, who gets noticed, who needs to sign the petitions, and then we prepare those petitions with all the information that we have to do the research on to prepare those. So our planning staff recommended to split the $1,000 fee, not an increase, just $500 for the initiation of those petitions. So once they come in to pick up those petitions, they would, or when they come in and say, hey, I need petitions, we'd collect $500 then. When they return them and we go through the process, they'd pay another $500. So
half up front,
half
at
up
the
front,
end.
half at the end, right? So that's what's being recommended there. So that's the change also being made to the fee schedule. Those are the two changes that we're proposing with this resolution. Again, resolutions are passed with a roll call vote.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. Are there any discussions? David?
Just as a matter of snoopy curiosity, when was the last time we had one of these right-of-way applications?
So our last right-of-way vacation was, I
And it's not something that happens every day.
I'm trying to remember the name of the street because it's not one.
Was it Auburn?
Well, it was,
No.
wasn't it the one behind Open Roads?
Yeah,
It goes-
it was like Auburn or something like that, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Auburn, yeah, Auburn.
Suderman.
Yeah, there's no street there.
I can't remember if that was the last one or
It
did
was-
we actually vacate the right of way down on the Fred Tevin Sons, the
Open
former
Road.
Dallas Mill Planing. There was like kind of
Yeah.
some phantom right of way there. I don't remember which one is the last.
I
but
gotta
we-
believe this is something. we
We've
don't do
done,
very often.
we've done two in the last couple of years. So they don't happen super often, but every once in a while they will happen. We do have other, rights of way that are in the city that have not been improved. So there's opportunity for this to occur again.
Just wondered.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Okay, question.
Brian, what is a preliminary plat?
So a preliminary plat is when someone comes in and first makes an application for a subdivision, they give us what's called that preliminary plat, right? So it doesn't have to be done by a surveyor, although we certainly recommend the surveyor to get involved early on. But it's a plan that shows, hey, I want to take this 1 acre parcel and I want to make it into 4 parcels or more. Once you hit that number of 4, they become lots instead of parcels. That's just semantics, but they come in with that drawing and say, here's how I want to divide up my land. That's a preliminary plat. That's what goes to the planning commission for approval. Once it's been approved, then the surveyor does get involved and they draft what's called a final plat. In that document, they'll go out and they'll set pins to monument where the new lots are being created. If there's any public improvements that are required, like constructions of streets or other public improvements, water lines, sewer lines, stuff like that, that takes place prior to recording that final plat document. So a lot of that work gets done in preparation for that final plat to then be recorded. Once all the public improvements have been made, that final plat will then be recorded. So the preliminary plat is what you bring in when you have land and you think, I want to do something with this, I want to divide it. The final plat is once the land has been approved for division and the public improvements have been made, you're now ready to create those formal lots that you can then sell.
And yeah, the magic is you can't sell until you record the final plat.
So this fee is for the recording of, it's not necessarily a city engineer going out and doing work.
The $500 fee for the final plat or the preliminary plat fee.
The preliminary, well, both.
So the preliminary plat fee is to have staff, both internal and external staff, like ODOT or DEQ, or someone might be interested in reviewing the application. The preliminary plat fee is the fee to get you through the planning commission decision to approve or deny your subdivision application. So that's the preliminary plat fee. Once you have an approved subdivision, the final plat fee is the $500 fee that you pay to have that final plat reviewed by city staff to make sure that, yep, this is consistent with the preliminary plat, right? If you had a preliminary plat that say had 20 lots, and then you have a final plat that shows 25 lots, you're gonna be, this isn't consistent, right? You need to make some changes to the final plat to be consistent with that preliminary approval. So we review that final plat to make sure it's consistent with what was approved. We make sure that all the public improvements have been done. If there's anything that needs to be recorded along with that document, we make sure the surveying was done appropriately. The county looks at that, and then it gets recorded at the county.
So one more question. So is this just restoring the prices that were there that were left off? We're not increasing them at all?
Yep.
Is there a reason why we're not increasing them?
So we want to review fees holistically, like comprehensively, one time a year. So this is just to put a fee on that was inadvertently taken off. We'll review fees for adjustments later on this calendar year.
Is that part of the SDC discussion?
It's not part of the SDC discussion. These are fees that are that do not include SDCs. There are certain fees that are not included in this master fee schedule, rates for water and sewer and storm being one, SDCs being another.
David.
Just one tiny little additional shred of context for you there. When the planning commission rules on a subdivision, for example, they'll almost always attach conditions to their approval saying, we approve it provided you do X, Y, and Z. And one of the very common conditions is whether it's a right of way or whatever it is, this has to be done before final plat approval can occur. So it's a big deal and it matters to the applicant. Because it's the last thing they have to satisfy whatever the conditions are before they can record the final plat.
Okay, we've heard discussion. The secretary will call the roll.
Counselor Shane,
Yes.
Counselor Verdin,
Yes.
Council President Schilling,
Yes.
Counselor Briggs,
Yes.
Counselor Collins,
Yes.
Counselor Jantz.
Yes.
I declare resolution 3498 has passed by unanimous vote. Anything else? Any other business? The only thing I want to add is our next city council meeting will be on a Tuesday night, February 21st, because of the holiday. Don't make that, calendars don't come on Monday because it'll be a short meeting. Anything else?
Is that the Martin Luther King holiday? Yes.
President's Day.
Yeah, no, that was last.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King was in January. Yeah.
So anything else?